I knew the moment that sleek pontoon boat slid away from my dock. Penelope, Penny, Sterling sitting rigid with her HOA lawyer whispering some nonsense into her ear, that this wasn't just another petty suburban spat. This was a full-blown hostile takeover attempt for a $3 million piece of private sanctuary. And the people coming after me had absolutely no idea they were picking a fight with the county sheriff himself. They tried everything you could imagine. Fabricated environmental claims, doctored drone photography, even hiring private security goons dressed up like law enforcement to inspect my cabin. All because Penny decided my island, the one place I could truly breathe, would look better as part of her lavish lakeside development project. But here's the thing about wearing a badge for 20 years. You get used to recognizing a predator long before they pounce. And when HOA Penny set her sights on my land, she didn't realize I had something she desperately lacked: facts, law, an airtight paper trail, and enough patience to watch her expose herself with every arrogant move. Before we dive into the deep end, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe. Trust me, you won't believe how this one ends. 3 years before this whole mess began, my life was a whole lot quieter. I wasn't wealthy, I wasn't looking for trouble, and I certainly wasn't expecting to spend my weekends defending a private island from the most unhinged HOA president I'd ever met. I was just Sam the Sheriff Miller, a middle-aged lawman who appreciated a good strong coffee, a peaceful morning patrol, and weekends spent anywhere away from people arguing about lawn heights. Then, my eccentric and utterly brilliant Aunt Martha passed away. God rest her soul. She was stubborn as an old mule and sharp as a tack. I expected a small bequest, maybe her antique fishing gear. What I didn't expect was an entire lakefront property and a small, man-made island right in the middle of Whispering Lake. The letter from her attorney didn't feel real at first. I reread the line. To my nephew, Sam, I leave my island, keep it safe. At least 5 times, thinking she was being poetic, meaning maybe a sandbar or a cluster of rocks. But no, it was a genuine island, about the size of a decent baseball diamond, barely rising above the water when she bought it. Over the years, Martha had hauled in fill, reinforced the shoreline, planted little shrubs, and even registered it as an independent parcel, complete with its own unique lot number. The woman literally built a tiny sovereign kingdom out there, one the county fully recognized, one the state taxed, and one every single HOA within 50 miles had zero legal authority over. I didn't appreciate the genius of that legal fortress until Penny came calling. I spent the better part of a year organizing Martha's meticulous paperwork. Every permit, every environmental assessment, every water rights letter. She hadn't just built a quirky retreat, she'd built a legal fortress. So, I followed her blueprint. I stabilized the shoreline, expanded the land slightly with approved fill, and built a modern, sturdy micro-cabin, solar power, rainwater filtration, composting toilet, everything off-grid and eco-friendly. If Martha laid the foundation, I built the legacy. My wife loved the place, my 2 kids loved it even more. No radios, no complaints about teenagers, no calls about overdue paperwork. Just quiet. Even as sheriff, I desperately needed that escape, that little patch of earth where the worst impulses of people couldn't reach me. The lake itself wasn't huge, maybe 60 acres, surrounded by old farm plots on one side, and a slow creep of modern suburbia on the other. For a while, no one bothered me. Then, the lakeside sanctuary started construction on the eastern shore. If you've never encountered the sanctuary, imagine a neighborhood where the sales brochures feature phrases like curated tranquility, and the houses come with mandatory memberships to 5 committees you didn't ask for. It was pristine, prepackaged, and utterly plastic. I figured they'd stay on their side. But then I found one of their glossy brochures washed up on my shore. The aerial photo of the lake was heavily edited, and my entire island was blurred out, a smudged gray blotch in the crisp blue center. That was the first flicker of unease, not anger, just a deep suspicion. A few weeks later, I was knee-deep in the water clearing the intake pump when I heard a low, steady mechanical hum. I turned and saw a sleek pontoon boat, white hull, chrome accents, drifting toward the island. 3 people were aboard, all wearing immaculate white linen, all standing stiffly. That was the first time I saw Penelope Wilson, Penny. Perfectly tailored blazer, sharp blonde bob, a bright smile that never reached her absolutely dead eyes. She looked exactly like the final boss of every HOA horror story. Beside her was Jessica, her PR liaison with an oversized clipboard, and behind them, Richard, their legal consultant, radiating that annoying swagger of a lawyer who practices his smirks in the mirror. They didn't wave, they didn't ask, they pulled right up to my dock. Penny stepped off the boat like she was disembarking onto a yacht. "Lovely spot you've got here, Mr. Miller," she said, her eyes roaming like she was calculating resale value. "Really a shame it isn't available to the community." I raised an eyebrow. "It's not part of your community, Penny." Richard chuckled, forced, rehearsed, and annoying. "This lake," Penny announced, her tone practiced and political, "has been voted into the Lakeside Sanctuary's jurisdiction." That's when the alarms went off. As sheriff, I'd been lied to by every con artist and criminal in the county. I knew the look of someone trying to wrap a lie in pretty, entitled language. Penny was gift-wrapping something ugly, and she didn't know the owner of the island was the one man in the entire county with the authority and stubbornness to take down people who thought they were above the law. I stepped out of the water, grabbed a towel, and dried my hands slowly, ensuring they knew I wasn't intimidated by their little field trip. "Since the sanctuary now manages the lake," she continued, "we're updating our records. This island has come up as a question." "A question?" I repeated. "It's a legitimate parcel of land with a deed recorded 30 years before your HOA even existed." "Yes," she replied smoothly. "The community voted last month to extend our jurisdiction to all shared water resources." "You mean your HOA voted?" I corrected. "Among yourselves. That doesn't mean anything to the county, the state, or to me. When a community acts together," she stiffened, "we believe it should mean something. You believe wrong." Richard chose that moment to step in, leaning forward with the confidence of a trust fund kid who thinks quoting statutes makes him dangerous. "Actually, when an HOA expands jurisdiction, it does." I cut him off. "Not over land it doesn't own. Not over water it doesn't manage. And definitely not over an island that predates your alliance by 3 decades. Richard opened his mouth, closed it, and adjusted his sunglasses. He just walked into a battle with someone who actually knew the law. Penny snapped her fingers. "Jessica, the report." Jessica flipped open a glossy folder with drone photos. They had circled my solar panels, my dock, my erosion reinforcements, even my composting toilet pipe. "This," Jessica began, "is considered unregulated development on a shared resource." "You know," I said, "if you're going to doctor drone images, maybe crop out the pine water landscaping trucks reflected in the water." Penny stiffened. Jessica blinked. "And the solar array?" "Fully permitted. County approved. Twice inspected." "You want the names of the inspectors?" "I know them." Penny pursed her lips. "We're here to offer solutions." "To what problem?" I countered. "The problem," she said, slowly, "is that your island is not accessible to the community. Pine Water residents have expressed concerns." "No, they haven't," I interrupted. "You have. You alone." Her eye twitched. I was breaking her composure. "So, what's the real reason you're here?" "We want to bring the lake into full harmony with our community vision," she replied, folding her arms. "It would be easier for everyone if you cooperated." "I'm not joining your HOA, Penny. HOA membership is irrelevant here," she said sweetly. "Good," I replied, stepping forward. "Because this island doesn't answer to you." "Not yet," she hissed, a clear, unmistakable threat. She climbed back onto the pontoon boat. I watched them go. That single threat, that "not yet," rattled me more than anything else. HOAs can vote on garden gnomes and fencing, but they can't rewrite land titles. Unless they find a way to make the county believe it's legal. Unless they bury you in paperwork until you can't breathe. This wasn't about aesthetics. This was a land grab, a hostile takeover wrapped in linen and jargon. And as the sheriff, I knew I had a fight on my hands. The next morning, I was back in uniform, but I was headed to the county records office. My deputies could handle the beat. I needed to handle the paper trail. Drew, the clerk, a Marine with thick glasses, greeted me. "Sounds like trouble, Sheriff," he grinned. "You could say that." Drew typed like a man who loved zoning code more than life itself. Seconds later, the printer was spitting out documents. I found it. The Lakeside Sanctuary had quietly filed a petition to reclassify the entire lake as a community man-managed recreational ecosystem. a fancy way of stealing jurisdiction disguised as environmental concern. The proposal listed unregulated shoreline disruption as a threat, and the accompanying photos, doctored and circled, showed my island as the primary threat. They were weaponizing environmental laws. Drew, I need everything on the sanctuary's expansion. Everything. He returned with a flash drive, pulling data from systems not meant for civilians, as he put it. And Sheriff, he leaned closer. They didn't file everything under the sanctuary. These right here, he tapped the screen, were filed under a development company, Coastal Pinnacle Holdings, LLC. I froze. Development company? Developing what? Drew opened the file. There it was, a glossy concept rendering titled Sanctuary Wellness and Luxury Expansion Phase 2. At the center of the plans was a 2-story glass and wood villa, private docks, a private boat lift, on my island. The logo read Coastal Pinnacle Experience, and below it, pending jurisdictional resolution and removal of unregulated structures. My island wasn't a nuisance. It was a gold mine, and Penny wanted it gone. I drove straight to my lawyer, Cassidy's office. I dumped the binder on her desk. "They're laying the groundwork to steal your island with a smile," she muttered, her eyes widening at the villa plans. "They can bury you in inspections, hit you with access restrictions, suffocate the island slowly." "So what do we do?" I asked. Cassidy leaned back, flipping her pen like a switchblade. "We go to war." I left her office with a plan. They wanted me reckless. I would be lawful. They wanted emotion. I would use statutes. The law was my battlefield. Driving back to the lake, I saw it. Construction equipment and survey flags on the shoreline opposite the island. They were building an oversized community pier Phase 1 restoration project. A public access anchor point, a gateway to claim proximity, regulation, and eventually, control. A declaration of war. I immediately radioed Deputy Hargrove to log a preliminary inquiry for possible zoning violations, creating an official timestamp in the system. Neutral, legal, documented. I wouldn't abuse my badge, but I would use my knowledge. The next day, I returned to the island. A sleek white boat with Sanctuary Lake Watch stenciled on the side was creeping around my island like a shark. 2 men in matching polo shirts approached my dock. "We're conducting a routine compliance inspection," one said. "No, you're not," I replied flatly. The man reached for a shiny metal badge clipped to his belt. Too shiny, too mass-produced. "This grants us access." I laughed, genuinely, then reached down, untied their dock cleat, and shoved their bow off the dock. "You don't have jurisdiction. You don't have legal standing. And that badge? You can buy a pack of those online for $14.99. They motored off, embarrassed and furious, writing on their fake clipboards. They were escalating, probing weaknesses, gathering scraps they could twist into ammunition. Late afternoon, I saw a woman on the finished pier across the lake, holding her phone, filming me. I waved. She flipped me off, twice, and kept recording. They were trying to villainize me, frame me, turn me into the enemy of the lake. I finished installing new, hidden security cameras and made a decision. If they were watching me, I needed to know exactly what they were planning. Before sunrise the next morning, I was at the records office again. Drew pulled up the development files for Coastal Pinnacle Holdings. The emails made my stomach knot. One from Penelope Wilson. Pending successful jurisdictional resolution of the island encroachment issue, Phase 2 construction can begin Q2 next year. Below it, an executive message. Please confirm removal timeline of the current occupant. Occupant, not owner. As if I were squatting. I drove back to the island. The second I stepped onto the dock, I froze. The cabin door was ajar. My sheriff's instinct took over. I nudged the door open. Inside, 2 men in dark blue security uniforms were rifling through my drawers. "Sir, we're conducting an inspection under HOA directive. Please vacate the structure." "Show me your warrant," I demanded, voice low. The older one turned, resting a hand on his pepper spray. Just then, heavy footsteps sounded on the dock. Noah, my old Army Ranger friend, a wilderness instructor, stepped into the cabin. He took one look at the uniforms. "Nope, those aren't cops." Before the fake officer could react, Noah snatched his badge, snapped the chain, and punched him square in the face. The guy dropped. The younger one bolted, sprinting down the dock, and jumped into his boat, fleeing. I called dispatch. Code 623 on Whispering Lake. Unauthorized individuals impersonating law enforcement. The real deputies cuffed the unconscious man. Records later confirmed both worked for Northern Apex Risk Solutions, a private security firm partially owned by Aaron Sterling, Penelope's husband. The sickening chain connected every time. That night, after filing the reports, I returned to the island to try and breathe. But I dragged a camp chair onto the deck, crowbar beside me, and kept watch. At 3:14 a.m., the alarm went off. The deck glowed orange. Fire. I sprinted toward the dock. The wooden walkway was engulfed in hungry flames. I blasted the extinguisher, white foam smothering the arson. When the smoke cleared, I found a small, half-melted scrap lying among the ashes, the laminated corner of the Pinewater Reserve HOA logo. They wanted me scared, but instead, I felt a resolve that was cold, focused, and determined. She had crossed the line from civil conflict to criminal warfare. The fire was the final piece of evidence. I packed everything, the charred fragments, the broken trail camera core, the GPS tracker serial number, into a heavy-duty evidence case. Cassidy's office door swung open before I even knocked. No one died, I said, dropping the case onto her desk. But someone tried to send a message. Nate, the cyber specialist, arrived, and we managed to pull one intact fragment of footage from the camera core, a partial image of a hand holding a blunt tool, mid-swing. A hand with an unmistakable tattoo, the same one we'd seen in a corporate photo of Aaron Sterling. They really thought they could get away with this, Cassidy grinned. No, I said. They really thought I wouldn't fight back. We prepared the filings, motions to freeze HOA accounts, requests for criminal investigation into Northern Apex, and a call for a judicial review of HOA governance misconduct. The hearing was set for Friday. The courthouse was packed. Penelope entered in a tailored pastel blazer, all soft angles, but her eyes were still dead. Her lawyer started his theatrical opening, claiming to represent a community deeply concerned about unregulated development. Cassidy interrupted. The island in question is my client's lawfully owned property, and it predates Pinewater Reserve by nearly 3 decades. Then the hammer dropped. Cassidy presented every document, the permits, the clean environmental clearances, the notarized deed. Then she shifted to the bombshell, the investor deck, the emails confirming the removal timeline, the surveillance balloon invoice, the Northern Apex GPS tracker serial number, and the trail cam image of Aaron's tattoo. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Sterling, are you acting on behalf of Pinewater Reserve, or in conjunction with a private development firm? Penelope opened her mouth, closed it, and no sound came out. Given the evidence, the judge continued, I am issuing the following orders. All construction and enforcement by Pinewater Reserve is to cease immediately. HOA discretionary accounts are frozen pending audit. He paused. This matter is referred to the county prosecutor for potential criminal investigation. The room exploded. The audit uncovered financial mismanagement so outrageous it could have been a reality show. Fraud, unlawful surveillance, conspiracy to commit arson. The prosecutor filed charges. Penelope and Aaron were arrested. In the final trial, Penelope didn't wear pearls. She wore handcuffs. The jury convicted them both. I didn't gloat. I simply exhaled. Justice, finally, was served. The Pinewater Reserve HOA dissolved by court order. The illegally built pier was torn down. I rebuilt my dock using fire-resistant composite materials, upgraded the solar, and installed a sign that Martha would have loved. Private property. Sovereign parcel. Not subject to vote. The real reward wasn't the win. It was standing at the end of my new dock, my kids fishing beside me. The water calm again, quiet, peaceful, untouched. My daughter looked up at the sign. Dad, she asked, does it mean no one's allowed to come here ever again? Of course not. I laughed, ruffling her hair. They just have to knock first. In life, the threats don't always wear masks. Sometimes they wear linen suits and smile like they're doing you a favor. Penelope taught me that truth. You don't lose freedom all at once. You lose it inch by inch, silence by silence. And if you're not paying attention, you wake up one day to find a stranger standing on your land with a clipboard telling you it isn't yours anymore. Protect what matters, your home, your peace, your rights. And when someone tries to steamroll you with fake authority, know the law, use the law, and don't back down. Now, I want to hear from you. What's the most outrageous thing an HOA or community bully has ever done to try and seize control from you? Tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, because around here, there's always another Penelope waiting to be taught a lesson.